This is a very serious moment in the country, and I appreciate the opportunity for us to speak to you about the effects of the Trump shutdown on real people, not just the federal workers who we know about, the 800,000 people across this country, including people who are being forced to go to work but not earning paychecks, but also the ripple effects of the people that those people serve. And I want to give my deepest thanks to the folks that you're going to hear from. We just had a very emotional meeting. We have our box of Kleenex here, listening to what people are going through and what this means for them. And I just so appreciate your being willing to share those stories, but even more for your resilience, for your dedication to the work you do. Two of these individuals actually wrote letters to me. That's how I met them, and most of these folks have never spoken before a group of people before, so just so you know that. Today is the 28th day of Donald Trump's shutdown of our government, now the longest shutdown in our country's history. And just in the past 2 weeks since Democrats took office, we have passed 8 bills to reopen the government. 8 separate bills to reopen the government, including the bill that was passed by the Senate unanimously, Democrats and Republicans, to end the to not have the shutdown occur. This was in December. And then, because Donald Trump watched Fox News and decides to make policy by who criticizes him on Fox News, he had a temper tantrum over a fantasy vanity wall and then decided to shut down the government by not allowing Congress to pass these very bills. So since we took office, we have made sure that we continue to pass these bills. There are bills that would open the entire part of the government that's shut down, but we've also passed individual appropriations bills that would open individual agencies totally separate from the Department of Homeland Security, at least getting some people back to work. Let me be very clear that there's zero justification for this shutdown and for the people alongside me to not have their paychecks. And I want to just do a quick reminder of the events and then quickly move into the stories. First of all, the president said for months last year that he was happy to shut down the government. Second, in a televised White House interview with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi in December, he again said the same thing, and he said that he would be proud to own a government shutdown. He does own this shutdown. Third, he actually approved the deal that was made in the Senate for $1.3 billion in border security. That was a compromise for Democrats and Republicans, and that would have kept this government going. The Senate passed that bill, as I said, unanimously. It would have prevented any shutdown from happening. And please remember that at the time that the government shut down, Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. So Republicans own this shutdown completely. There was no crisis on the border that required shutting down the government and depriving 800,000 federal workers of their paychecks. Now, however, the blame also extends to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and to the Senate Republicans that still haven't stood up to say what they know to be true, which is that this shutdown is unnecessary. It is wrong. It appears that Mitch McConnell has added a big papa chair to the Senate. There is now an additional member of the Senate who controls everything, and all the other Republicans in the Senate who were elected by their states, constituents in their states, to do their job, those people are now saying, "Papa, may I?" before they do anything. Congress is a co-equal branch of the executive branch, and we have the right to pass bills, to consider and pass bills. And then the president has the ability to veto if we don't get to a veto-proof majority. But Mitch McConnell should bring the same bill that he passed in December back up for a vote now. This is too serious, and there's too many people who are hurting. In Washington state, we are actually in the top 12 states across the country in terms of federal workers who are affected. We have about 10,000 federal workers who are directly affected, who are either furloughed or working currently without pay. And my staff has been talking to stakeholders across the district from Burien to Seattle to Edmonds. We've received dozens and dozens of calls from constituents who are outraged that they're not able to do what they want to do, which is go to work or get a paycheck, but who also don't want us to cave to an unreasonable hostage taker. And it isn't just the federal employees who are affected. You'll hear a little bit about this, but right here in the district, I wanted to give you some numbers of how these ripple effects are happening. We have more than 26,000 families who are on SNAP food assistance benefits, and a further 11,000 women and children who receive WIC benefits. We have 8,000 families who are receiving federal housing assistance or vouchers, and SNAP and some of the housing assistance is still in effect because agencies are trying to do everything they can and taking extraordinary measures. But the longer this drags on, the less likely it is that those agencies can do that. At the University of Washington, there are some 600 employees, many of them doing important and life-saving research that are at risk. The university is currently relying on reserves to fund those positions. Much of Sound Transit's mass transit projects are at risk because they depend on federal appropriations. The Coast Guard has been deeply impacted, including workers who have not been paid and the suspension of certain patrols. Community transit can't get millions in federal reimbursement for the operation of Swift Green bus lines. And at the Port of Seattle, they could normally get EPA approval to begin repair on a damaged pile wall at one of their terminals, but the EPA is shut down. So that means they're unable to take action, and there is a risk of long-term damage to that terminal. In addition, the port's critical Superfund cleanups work at 2 different sites is facing delays. I also want to just mention quickly before I turn it over to our incredible speakers that, as you know, I've visited the border repeatedly over the last year, and the only crisis that exists there is one that is of Trump's making. Asylum seekers who cannot be processed, families who have been ripped apart. We just got a report that there were even more children than were originally revealed to us that were ripped apart from their families. So that is the real crisis on the border, and it's a manufactured crisis, just like the shutdown. Manufactured by somebody who had a temper tantrum around a fantasy vanity wall, but the effects on real people's lives that are far from fantasy. So with that, let me turn this over to our first speaker, who is Diana DeForest. She is a fellow HUD, she's a HUD employee and the mother and the sole wage earner of her family, and she brought her kids and her husband here today. And Diana, we're so pleased that you could join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the chance to be here. I just want to briefly talk about my experience as a federal worker. I have been supporting my family for the past 14 years. I've always been proud to work for the federal government, proud to pay taxes. We talk a lot about taxes in our house, pays for schools and roads and other important things that we need, such as government. Right out of the box, as soon as we were furloughed, my mom called me up and said, "Honey, do you need some money?" And it's pretty embarrassing at my age to have to get a loan from Mom, but I said, yes, please. I did not save enough before Christmas, so we are doing okay with that loan from my mom. But I've been looking for work. Craigslist is hiring mystery shoppers, but even those jobs are hard to get, it turns out. I did not get a call back. I will be painting a friend's house this coming week, earning some good honest money for doing some good work that I can do while I'm barred from doing my actual job. I am more concerned, more than for myself and my colleagues who are barred from working, I'm concerned about the people that we serve. We are not allowed to help them. We're not allowed to answer our phones. We're not allowed to answer our emails. We serve the public, people that need housing assistance, people that need help with possible discrimination, people that don't know where to go. They call HUD, and we do our best to help them. And it absolutely breaks my heart to be barred from doing that work. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Next, I'd like to ask Angie Tucker, who is the legislative coordinator for AFGE Local 1102, representing employees at our federal detention center. She's been an incredible labor leader and has a powerful story to tell about herself and other federal employees at the federal prison. Angie?
With me is Officer Britt as well. We're together here. We just really need our story heard. We started out this shutdown. It's not our first. And we've been through it. We thought, okay, we're going to get through this, but there's no end in sight. And I don't believe people understand in our communities that we're here, we're working 16-hour shifts, we're not being paid, we're tired, our morale is down, and we need something to happen. I mean, where are you at, Mitch? We're getting angry. Seriously. Mitch McConnell needs to call the vote. It's frustrating. We show up every day. We risk our lives with inmates at the Federal Detention Center, and no one, even in our community, I don't think they understand, and that's why we're here, to make sure. I have running partners that didn't realize it was affecting me. They thought it was only parks that were closed. It's not just parks. We're working in your community or not working, and things that vitally need to be done aren't happening. So where are you at, Mitch? Call the vote. If you need the phone number, 866-803-8830. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I'd like to ask Cairo D'Almeida, who is the president of AFGE Local 1121, representing the TSA agents who work at SeaTac Airport.
Congresswoman, thank you for having me. Everyone, for those of you who like to write book, you can contact me on the side. I have a lot to say, but right now, let's address the shutdown. I spent my 2 off days calling food banks, answering phone call from the health department, asking me, do this officer work for TSA? I say, yes. When was the last paycheck? December 28th. The 2 days that I spent calling off, I slept 3.5 hours each day. And if I get emotional, I'm sorry. Please end the shutdown.
And finally, I'd like to ask Michael Peeler to come and speak to you. Michael is a Department of Housing and Urban Development construction manager who has worked there for 30 years. Michael and Diana both wrote me letters. Never met them before. I didn't know them. I try to take a few of the constituent letters that I get every week and do personal responses. They happen to be 2 of the people that I responded to. And I really appreciate both of them writing to me and then also coming out here to speak. Mike.
Thanks, Congresswoman. It's from my standpoint, I wanted to first of all say that I've never done something like this before, and I found myself for my 30-year career with HUD in probably the most political job you could have of being in the shadows. But the past couple of years, I have written to my congresspeople 3 times, actually, and that's more than I've ever done in my entire career because a lot of things have affected me and my family. I'm a furloughed employee, so I work for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I've basically been shunned from being from the office, not being able to look at email, do anything with my work. And this is the first week that I was not paid in my 31 years that I've worked with HUD. And it's the first time that I had to dip into savings to pay bills this week. And that's a tough one. That's a really tough one for someone who is really the primary breadwinner for our family. And secondly, the thing that is the toughest thing for me also too is that for the past year, my husband and I have been working very, very hard to get our house ready to sell. And the concern is what could an extended government shutdown do for the confidence of potential home buyers out there? Are we going to be able to sell our house? There's that ripple effect that happens with all this, and that's what's really scary from our standpoint, that we've been working so hard to be able to do that. And third is that, so again, not only have we had to pay out of savings, not be able to sell our house potentially, but at the same time, I'm planning on retiring after nearly 32 years in July. And I've got some real concerns potentially about how this government shutdown could affect the paperwork and being able to actually retire and be able to move on with what we're considering the second halves of our lives. So personally, that's what's really important to me. But also, too, I care very much about what I do. I've been a civil servant. I took an oath of office, and when I started as a senior from the University of Washington, people said, no, this is not something that you do as a career. Almost 32 years later, I love my job. I oversee all the construction of new care facilities around the country. And what concerns me the most about that is not only do I not have full oversight of what's being constructed around the country, but I also have contract inspectors that inspect properties on a monthly basis. I'm not able to review their trip reports. I'm not able to review their invoices, and they're not getting paid either. So I'm not getting paid, my inspectors aren't getting paid, and it's senseless. It's really, really tough. So again, thank you very much for the invitation. And it's important for, I think, everyone to get a face of how this is affecting us and this ripple effect of what's happening and could potentially be happening if this goes on any longer. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. I feel so fortunate to live in this district with people like this. So I just want to thank you again for your service, and for anybody who makes the argument that government doesn't really matter or that these services can be contracted out. I just challenge you to find people who are more dedicated to their jobs and to the range of services that government provides across this country. And so with that, let me stop here and see if anyone has any questions for anyone. Everyone here has said they're willing to answer questions if you have them for them as well.
So with all these stories and that we're hearing, why not compromise? Why not give the president a little bit of what he wants in terms of funding for border security? I mean, it's a very dire picture you're painting. I mean, why not reach a deal?
Well, there was a deal that was reached. It was $1.3 billion for border security. The question has never been about border security. It's been about a needless wall, a fantasy wall. And let me ask you what happens with hostage takers. The next time the president decides that he wants to cut Social Security and shuts down the government, the next time he decides he wants to end legal migration and shuts down the government, the next time he decides he wants to cut food stamps or SNAP, is this how we interact? And whose responsibility is it at this point to end this shutdown? It has and always has been the president's and now Mitch McConnell's responsibility to do what is right for the country. But to continue to try to take the country hostage and to put 800,000 federal workers and the actual security of the country first, I think is absolutely outrageous, untenable, unpresidential. I'm trying to use words that I can use on camera. It really is stunning to me, absolutely stunning. And we are not in the business of taking hostages. And everyone that has written to me has said this to me, and I don't know if any of you want to speak. I actually asked this honestly in our meeting. I said, please tell me if you feel that we are not doing the right thing here. And Diana, you had a very strong answer on this. I don't know if you would like to give it here.
I know I said.
Step up to the microphone.
Sure. I just said absolutely back you, Congresswoman, in standing strong. This is a hostage situation, and I want to work. I don't want the wall. I don't want that money to pay for the wall.
Please. I just want to like to add to Congresswoman's comment about the vanity wall. It's a true statement. Technology today is 10 times that, if not more, to take care of that part of the country. They have to handle the tunnels under those walls first, and they're going to keep digging. That physical wall is not going to stop anything, nothing at all. So let's look into technology. It's probably more expensive, but we can do that. Waiting time is a little bit of the time and take care of business. The physical wall is not one thing, and we're not supporting it.
Can I add something, Angie? I'd like to focus less on the wall and let democracy work. Okay, that will come out at the end, but if you're going to talk about border security, we are your security here. We're keeping inmates in, keeping them safe, but keeping them locked up. Your border patrol is not being paid. So I can't understand where you say it's about border security and you're not paying the ones that are here.
Along those lines, since you're standing there with the microphone, Angie, and Cairo as well, with the rank and file morale down, as you said, how do you feel security is inside the prisons and at the airports?
Speaking specifically about myself and my coworkers, we're sticking together. We're banding together. That's why some of us will work a 16-hour day to make sure the next one can go home, see their family that day, and come back. We've been extremely short-staffed, and it's really hard to recruit people to come and work for you and say, but you don't get paid. So our morale is very low, but we're banding together as family.
I know you don't want to talk about yourself, but you should also just, if you want to, mention some of the effects of taking sick leave and things.
Oh, yeah, I've shared this before. I'm a proud breast cancer survivor, but I'm a year out. And saying that, I've been at the, sorry, I get emotional. I've been with the Bureau for 15 years, and so I don't have a lot of sick leave. And I had to take a leave without payday, potentially, depending on how this all ends, to go deal with banks to see if somebody will work with me. It's a humbling experience. The feds do a thing every year through the summer. We compete with institutions, Fed Feed Family, and we donate food to local food banks. And it's humbling when they donate back to you. And I'm not too proud to take a box of food for my family, but we shouldn't have to because I'm working. I deserve my paycheck, along with my coworkers, along with TSA, along with HUD. So it's democracy. Let democracy work, okay? If they passed it in December, let's go. Pay us and figure it out.
Thank you. And did you want to say?
Oh, no, in terms of security, TSA.
Can I take a deep breath first? I'm very proud of the TSA officers at SeaTac and around the state of Washington. They have listened to me. I have asked them specifically, do not call off sick. You're not getting paid. If you have to call off sick, ask for a furlough time off so you can go ahead and heal yourself and come back to work. As far as security is concerned, we got it under control. We are not going to allow one individual to affect our security. Not here, not now, not ever.
I just want to remind people that 62% of Americans don't even have $1,000 in their savings account. 40% don't even have $400 for an emergency. So this is the situation when people talk about dipping into their savings, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, but these are some of the luckier individuals here who have parents who can give a loan or who have some savings that they've never touched in their life because they're preparing for retirement. What about all the people who don't? What about the people like Angie who are dealing with health crises in the middle of all of this and have to not only keep the morale up? One thing that Angie said to me is that the individuals within the prison, the inmates within the prison, love this. They love that these federal employees are getting essentially dismissed by the federal government, and they have to deal with that harassment within the prison as well, the laughter that comes because these folks are having to work without pay. So there are all kinds of effects on this, all because one man in the Oval Office had a little temper tantrum around a campaign promise he made. Remember, Mexico was going to pay for the wall? Mexico's going to pay for the wall? Mexico's going to pay for the wall? Why? Because everybody knows the wall is not the answer to anything. It never has been. It's been a symbol of an anti-immigrant promise that he put forward to his base, and that's what he's trying to fulfill.
As far as next steps, I mean, is there any hope on the horizon as far as this thing actually ending?
Well, the way it has to end, I mean, it's as it stretches out longer, it feels more and more like a hostage situation, and it becomes less and less likely that Democrats will cave on this, because if we do, what happens the next time? What message do we send? And, I mean, that's separate from how we feel about the morality of the wall. But I think that this is really about Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. And I can tell you, Donald Trump is losing even important parts of his base. Polling, the most recent polling on this shows that he is losing the people that he relied on to win. For a while, he was staying with, you know, decent support on the Republican side. That has gone down. Independent support is next to nothing. Some of the places he's losing are sort of white working class men who have been traditionally with him no matter what. That's starting to go away because these folks are serving many of those folks. Many of those folks have jobs that they're not getting paid for, or they're having to go into work, and they don't understand why we can't have this discussion after we reopen the government. I can tell you why he doesn't want to do that, because he had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House for 2 years, and he couldn't get this money passed. Not even within his own party. So that's what's going to have to happen.
Congresswoman, what would you be asking your constituents to do at this point? Is it reaching out to Mitch McConnell's office? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is about reaching out to Mitch McConnell and to senators that haven't spoken out. I will say there are some Republican senators who have spoken out. I know there's a bipartisan letter circulating in the Senate about bringing these votes to the floor. You know, when Angie said, let democracy work, that was a beautiful thing to say. Let democracy work. Let the Senate do its job. Let the House do its job. Some House members, Republican House members, are voting with us. I can't remember what the last number was. I think it was around 8 or 10. Some are voting with us on these reopening of government. They know this is ridiculous. So call Mitch McConnell, call the senators, demand that we get this bill to a floor vote, and then let's put it in Donald Trump's hand. Let's force that hand and get government working again. Let's open government, and then he can have whatever discussions he wants to have around the border wall. Rich?
A question for Cairo. Is there any support for, I know it's illegal, but a strike TSA for TSA workers?
I know there's a lot of innuendo going on through TSA workers that if we all walk out of the airport, the airlines are going to get to the president, and the president's going to have to make a decision to open up, to stop the shutdown. I'm against it. I know I'm going to hear a lot from my national AFGE, and I tell my officers, do not go there. You're not old enough to remember air traffic controllers. Okay? Air traffic controllers, if you're old enough, they all strike nationwide, and they had a union. They were all fired by President Reagan.
Yeah.
And I know President Trump will not hesitate 1 second to replace the entire federal workforce. So we're not going to go there.
But I think this is a really important point. Okay, we're talking about security. This is supposedly all about security. But we're talking about the people who have been furloughed or who are working without pay. Many of them are performing those national security tasks. So the Coast Guard, TSA, the federal prison. I mean, these are all the people who we actually need to be working, who are now working without pay. And you've got to believe that I know the employees are excellent, but the fact that Angie's having to work 16-hour days because she's short-staffed, because there are people calling in sick, there are people who can't do this anymore.